Hi, I'm Chris Watts from St. Lawrence University, and this is a presentation that I put together for a New York 6 think tank event. So I'm going to try a new style of visual aids here that I've never used before. If it doesn't work out, it's only a few minutes, so you'll probably be okay. I'll manage expectations by pointing out that I am a musician by training and not a visual artist. So the premise of my talk is that the zombies are already among us, and we just didn't notice when the zombie apocalypse took place. There are a lot of things going on in the world right now that just don't make any sense to the average humanist. And I think there's hope in that fact. I mean, at least we can still tell that things are messed up. I don't have time to touch on all of them, but I think that there are a lot of different things that you can gather up as evidence that the zombies are indeed shuffling among us, quietly converting our brothers and sisters to their incoherent but ominous cause. So, when I talk about zombies, I'm talking about the good old-fashioned, slow, shuffling, brain-eating zombie. And the difference between person and zombie is the difference between subject and object. It's really a question of agency, right? At the end of the day, are you an end or are you a means? And here's the particular issue that I want to focus on today. The technology-driven obsession with quantification is turning science from a methodology into a religion, with numerical data as its holy sacrament. And the problem with the data fetish is that life is actually the thing that happens in between the data points. So if we insist on quantifying everything and then either oversimplifying or ignoring things that are hard to quantify, then we're effectively dumbing down our own existence and willing ourselves into zombies. And when science becomes a religion, it develops all of the trappings, including its own very strange eschatology, which is the singularity. And also, the scope of science expands such that every question is a scientific question. People become really quite comfortable with the idea of using science to pretend to answer questions that are probably ultimately not scientific. My favorite example of this is the way that some researchers in neuroscience and artificial intelligence like to pretend like they know what the mind is. The latest really soul-crushing example of this that I have heard about is something that's coming out of Princeton, where they have basically solved the mind-body problem by positing that the mind doesn't exist. The brain just thinks that it does. In other words, we don't have any internal awareness at all. We're simply mistaken about that. So you might say that we're zombies, but we're zombies with delusions of grandeur, so it's okay, I guess. Now, if we're willing to say that we have no subjective internal experience, if we're willing to say that our thoughts and feelings are not real, then we willingly reduce ourselves to objects. And you can see how, if I'm an artificial intelligence researcher, that would be great because it makes my dream of building a computer that's alive so much easier to achieve. Because what I've done is I've substantially lowered the bar for what it means to be alive. So what are some of the things that make me a person, a subject, that are in peril because of this zombie attack? Well, first, I can form and maintain personal relationships that are meaningful. I can join a group for any number of different reasons, and I can enjoy a sense of shared purpose with like-minded individuals. But at the same time, I have my own unique sense of a personal identity and my own sense of individual purpose, and I don't have to give those things up to join a group. I'm curious about the world around me. I have an inner life and a subjective experience of the world that stands apart from any objective description of that experience. And I can appreciate nuance and even enjoy ambiguity in a very complex world. But if I become a zombie, then I lose all of those things. Or I could say that if I give up all of this stuff, that's when I become a zombie. The relationship between people and data has gotten so turned around that you know that in Silicon Valley, it's no exaggeration to say that data is more important than people. And at the top of the pile is information. For some, information is the very stuff from which the universe was formed. And we're on this epic trajectory, sort of higher and higher orders of abstraction, until one day the entire universe will become one giant superbrain. And people are only useful in this scenario in potentially two ways, really. First, as an evolutionary step in this process. And second, if we're all connected to one another by, the internet, then we can also potentially function as cells in the giant brain. And honestly, I wish I were making this stuff up, but I'm not. This is a very prevalent worldview, especially among technologists. And if you want to know more about it, then you should read Kevin Kelly. I think we need to turn this back over while there are still non-zombies around to try, because people have to be valued more than data. And I think that we know that there's no such thing as knowledge or, God forbid, wisdom, unless it's focused through the lens of a culture. And that takes people. So in this scheme, we don't really even need a concept called information. And I would like to suggest to you that there is, in fact, no such thing. Information is really a technical term anyway, and it refers to an artifact of communication. It doesn't have anything to do with content or meaning. And to paraphrase Stephen Talbot, when we use the word information today, all we really mean is stuff. And we don't need a layer of stuff in between data and knowledge. The only thing we need in the middle is people, because only people can turn data into meaning. And there's a technical term for that process too. It's called magic. I like mystery and ambiguity. And if there are things in the universe that are ultimately unknowable, I actually think that's pretty fantastic. And I also like science and technology a lot, but we have to recognize how deeply unhealthy our relationship with technology can become. So here are 3 different philosophies of communications technology. And I'm going to give you the short version of this. In the first row, I'm using communication technology to communicate with you, and vice versa. But in the second row, this shift has occurred. And now I'm using technology, and I'm also using you. Because to me, you have become just another means to gratify my needs and desires. And maybe you're doing the same thing to me, but I don't know or care about that, really. And I think maybe that's where we are now. In the third row, though, this other shift has taken place. And now the technology is using us. It's become the subject, and we've become the things. And that seems really far-fetched, doesn't it? I mean, why would we do that to ourselves? And maybe we wouldn't. But if the people who make our tools see the world this way, then the tools are going to reinforce that view. It can be insidious. So, to return to this drawing, my position is that when the pendulum swings too far toward focusing only on what can be precisely measured, as it has, in my view, and when our relationship with technology becomes unbalanced, as it has, in my view, then we find ourselves under pressure. We kind of put ourselves under pressure, really, to become more zombie-like in a whole variety of ways. We lower our expectations of one another and ourselves because we put our faith in technology instead of in people. We oversimplify and we homogenize because that makes it easier to interact with technology. And at the same time, we become navel gazers and we forget that other people are people too. So it's like we manage to become both less individualistic and more self-absorbed at the same time. Here are some examples of the kinds of attitudes that result from what I'm talking about. Why would I follow someone on Twitter who spews partisan trash all the time if it's not the kind of partisan trash that I like? I mean, in politics, there are only 2 answers to any question, and so you're either right or you're wrong. And All of my friends on Facebook agree with me on all the issues, so I already know that I'm right. Why would I pay $60,000 a year to send my kid to college when they could get an online degree for maybe a tenth of the price and never have to leave their bedroom? That's convenience, right? Plus, did you know that some college professors earn tens of thousands of dollars a year? And, I visited that expensive school and it's nice, but they don't have an indoor rock climbing wall or valet parking. There's no turn down service in the dorms. And frankly, I expect more. So I got this new smartwatch. It's way better than the Apple Watch. It's like a super triple smartwatch. And so now I have tracking data for my pulse, blood pressure, cholesterol, calories, sleep, digestion, activity, hydration, bowel movements, stress level. And I can make life decisions with computer-like precision. I can optimize my own life for efficiency. Isn't that fantastic? Now, how do we push back against any of this stuff? Well, the best answer I can come up with is this. First of all, we've got to make a case. Those of us in the arts and humanities have got to engage with these kinds of issues and take them head on. Secondly, we have to recognize that this is not a technology problem. It's a relationship problem. We've got to be very intentional about our relationship with technology, especially looking at the ways that it can cause us to shift our thinking about one another and ourselves. If what it means to be a person in the 21st century is changing, that's okay, unless we don't know that it's happening and we're not directing that change ourselves. Because if that's what's going on, then we really are just objects. And zombies show us exactly what that future looks like. I told my 8-year-old son that I was giving this short talk about zombies, and he didn't believe me. I had to show him the event website. But once he was convinced, then he wanted to draw a picture too. And this is what he drew. And yes, his zombie is holding a phone and a laptop and is surrounded by gadgets of all kinds while thinking about gadgets. And here's the thing. I didn't tell him about that part of the talk. I only told him that it was about zombies. And he's 8. So maybe there's hope?